want to show you what a trauma trigger looks like. I want to show you what PTSD looks like. Because most people think that PTSD is getting a bit upset if you remember something, but it's a lot more deep-seated than that. I don't have a cold. I don't have a sore throat. I don't have a chest infection. I've got asthma, and my asthma was dormant for 20 years. It used to be exercise triggered in my 30s when I was competing for GB at a high level. I haven't had any trouble with asthma for many, many, many years. And then the problems with the wheeziness came back about a year or so ago. I've got an inhaler called Symbicort, which looks like this, which is a relatively standard inhaler, which I just have to take when I feel wheezy. Now, my asthma, I get a cough. I don't wheeze, I get a cough. Now, I often forget about that whole asthma thing, and I don't always know how my trauma symptoms are going to pop up and in what form. I've always found the limb centre incredibly hard. And to begin with, I was wondering why, because they're giving me things. But the limb centre is connected to the hospital. And the hospital's where the trauma happened. On Friday, the limb centre visit did not go well. It was probably one of the worst ones I've had. I was there for 5 hours and we didn't fix the problem. And I have to go back on Wednesday. Whilst I was there, a helicopter came in to land. That's a trigger because my bed in the hospital ward was underneath the helipad. Whilst I was there, we were talking about my leg bleeding and the fact that I thought that my bone was hitting the bottom of the socket and that's why it was sore. They didn't quite believe me to begin with, thinking that the pump at the bottom would prevent that from happening. But eventually, it was decided that was likely that what was happening. The not believing me is also a trigger. It's one of my PTSD triggers. That was what started the whole PTSD off in the first place, was the fact that none of the doctors believed me when I said I had a circulation problem. The bleeding on my stump. I've had that problem for the last week, and it was thought at first it was friction related. And we were talking about the bleeding, and that is a trigger for me because way back at the very beginning, I fell on my way in the back door and cut my stump, and I needed stitches. But it healed up okay to begin with. And then I went to the limb centre to try my first leg on, and it bust open. And I was wheeled over to ED, and I sat there for several hours waiting to be looked at, and I got it stitched. So that's a trigger. All of these little things are all many multiples of triggers. And I wasn't able to keep it together. By the end of the appointment, I was a wreck. But I didn't realise what would happen next. So when I got home, I then started to lose my voice. And I had no voice over the weekend at all. It's just starting to come back. I've had the worst cough in the world. And I've not been able to sleep for the last 3 days. And I've got a pounding headache. It's actually been giving me nosebleeds. Now, to begin with, I thought maybe I'd caught the thing that my partner had had, but it really didn't feel like a chest infection to me. And it even didn't feel like a throat infection because my throat isn't sore. And then I sat, closed my eyes, and thought about it. And what I realised was that my whole throat felt really tight. So I thought, I wonder if the cough is asthma. And so I started taking this inhaler, which I don't have to take regularly. And I've had to take the maximum 8 doses a day to even slightly touch the sides of this. I went to the doctor this morning to get checked to make sure I didn't have a chest infection or a throat infection or any other thing. And the way I described my symptoms and the way I sounded, she was convinced I did. But everything is clear. This is an asthma trauma response to Friday. She had never seen anything quite so severe as a trauma response, ever. So like I said, PTSD does not mean someone getting upset about something. The triggers and the root causes are much deeper than that.